But if I have, or comment.
Yeah, they may come
Hi,
up.
everyone. Hi, everyone. And welcome to XYZ Masterclass on Sustainable Film Production. Today we will dive into sustainability. What are the key aspects for production to be sustainable? What does it mean for a production to be economically, socially, and environmentally sustainable? What is Albert? And most importantly, what is the future of sustainable filmmaking? This event is presented by Film Tampere together with XYZ Films. And the event is funded by European Union Next Generation. So thank you, the Ministry of Education and European Union Next Generation, for funding this event. Thank you so much. And of course, thank you, Tampere Film Festival, for letting us be here today, part of your international and industry program. Thank you so much, and thank you for your collaboration in organizing this event. But I'm Fanni Heinonen from Finland, and now I have the honor to introduce our guests. The panel of the masterclass, Aram Tertzakian, co-founder of XYZ Films and film producer. And the panelists, Tilly Ashton, Sustainability Coordinator from Wales. And Anne Puolanne, Sustainability Manager from Opti, Audiovisual Producers Finland. Welcome to Tampere and welcome to Tampere Film Festival. Thank you for being here today. And Jipe, please, could you share some words with me?
Thank you. And on behalf of Tampere Film Festival, I am glad that we can host this kind of events here at the festival, because we feel that we are a platform that we want to offer different kind of events concerning cinema, and sustainability is one of our values, one of our goals, I would say, even better, because there's still a long way to become a sustainable film festival, but we are working towards that. So a warm welcome from us also to this, and I'm sure that you will enjoy this occasion. Thank you from Tampere. Thank you, Aram, for being here and actually meeting first time in person. We have been Zooming the last couple of years, so it's so nice to actually meet people at a film festival. It makes me warm in my heart. So thank you very much, and I enjoy and learn.
Great. Thank you. And for audience to know, this panel will be recorded, and we will have approximately 5 to 10 minutes time in the end of the masterclass for you to share questions and your thoughts. So please don't hesitate to share your thoughts and ask questions. Thank you so much for being here today, and enjoy the masterclass.
So thank you, Fanni. Thank you, Jukka. That's great. We're going to have a good time today. We're going to talk about very important issues and try to do it in a way that's relatable, actionable, and inspirational. So it's not all going to be heavy doom and gloom. But that being said, before we start, I'd be remiss not to begin on a somewhat somber note, given the state of the world right now and given what's going on specifically in Ukraine. I know it's on everybody's minds, so I just want to take a minute to acknowledge that and also point out very specifically that you're probably in this room today because you are mindful and aware and concerned about the environmental crisis, but even if that's not at the forefront of your mind, realize that there's also environmental and geopolitical impacts that come with the state of the world today. For example, Russia controls 10% of the world's oil and 24% of the world's natural gas, and finding ways to change that balance is not only good for the world that we're living in from a big picture environmental point of view, but also to hopefully encourage a more free and democratic state for our world as well. So I just want to get that out of the way and put that on the table. And with that, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Aram Tertzakian. I'm a co-founder and partner at LA-based XYZ Films. We are a production, international sales, talent management, and domestic distribution company. I'll keep my introduction short, but for the purposes of this crowd, XYZ produced a film called Duel that's going to be playing Saturday here at the festival. It's the first American film shot entirely in Finland. It stars Aaron Paul from Breaking Bad and Karen Gillan, directed by Riley Stearns. And more recently, for the purposes of today's conversation, we've just wrapped production on a film called Havoc, starring Tom Hardy and Forrest Whitaker, that was shot entirely in Wales and will be released by Netflix either later this year or early next. And important to note that a big section of the VFX on that film is being done by none other than Troll here in Tampere as well. So XYZ has deep connections in this area, specifically thanks to the Tampere region and to Film Tampere and Business Tampere for allowing us to impart our knowledge and be a part of what you guys are building here. So just honored. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Tilly to introduce herself, and then Anne.
Hi, it's great to be here all the way from Wales. My name's Tilly Ashton. I'm a production sustainability advisor. Just to give you a bit of context, my career over the years has been broadly to do with sustainability, but in many different areas. So I have a background in journalism, PR, and campaign management, but always with a sort of goal of trying to save the planet. Most recently, about 4 years ago, I became environmental assistant on a Paramount production in London. And then, of course, COVID-19 came along and the whole world ground to a halt. So then, once things opened up again, Havoc came to Wales, and I was able to work for Netflix as production sustainability advisor. And as a result, as Aram said, we wrapped on that in the autumn. So we have lots of stories to share from that today. But also, what I'm working on now is also very exciting. So we won some Film Cymru Welsh Government funding to take all of our work and learnings from Havoc and use our data set from our carbon footprint and take that forward to really drill down and identify ways of moving into the future, working on our infrastructure, coming up with some interesting research and development ideas. So that's all going on at the moment. And the other thing is I'm about to train to deliver Albert training, which we'll be talking more about later on.
Thank you, Tilly. Anne.
My turn.
Pleasure to have you here.
Likewise. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm the Finnish spice here. I used to actually study here in Tampere, so the city is, I'm very aware of the city. Currently, I live in Helsinki. I'm working as a sustainability manager in the Audiovisual Producers Finland, APFI. So that's my main job at the moment. I'm also, like a big part of me is also a freelancer in the industry. I've worked in the TV section for 11 or 12 years now, so I'm trying to move the industry to a more sustainable way, but also I'm very aware of the problems and good and bad what is happening within the industry in the filming while you're filming in the productions. I have 2 degrees, so I have a degree in media. And then when I got my final thesis out, I was actually the first one in Finland to write about sustainability in our industry in the Finnish language. That was back in 2012, if I'm not lying very much. And basically, when I started Googling, I wanted to do my final thesis on the topic, but there was like 0 results when I typed in Finnish. Like green movie, there was nothing. So I had to, I was writing it with my student colleague. So we expanded our thesis to be something about like what is happening in the world and behind the scenes, apparently. So yeah, we did a paper on what is happening internationally, and then like some of the things we wrote down, I'm seeing them happening right now. So it's been like a 10 years ride. So in between, I kind of tried to do my best to bring out the topic to Finland, but like there was a kind of a wall, like this is nothing to do with us. Like it's nice that you're interested in sustainability, but probably the latest when I talked about this was in 2015 or 16. And then I just decided that, okay, I will just work in the industry. So when the topic is something that the industry is interested in it, I have my grounds in the industry, and people know that I also know about the productions. And the other side of me, also, I have a degree in sustainability, so that was something a bit more recent. I studied while I was working in productions, so that became like a bigger and bigger thing with me. I'm the co-author with Kaika Astikainen. We wrote Ekosetti, which is the first Finnish guidebook on sustainability. So I think that came out in 2019, and I think that was like a turning point in Finland. Like then things really started happening here. I'm also a founding member. Like I have many positions here, like multiple personalities here. So I'm also a founding member of Nordic Eco Media Alliance, NEMA in short. So I'm also not only thinking about the topic in productions and in Finland, but also on a Nordic level. So I'm kind of, I might have taken a big piece of the cake here, but I'm trying to push the industry like forward in a big manner. We can go more into detail my UPFI work later on, so I won't go there.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I think for us it's a very well-balanced panel. We have a leading Welsh and UK expert, a leading Finnish expert, and me.
In between?
Somewhere in between. Oh. But what I wanted to start with was there's a lot of words that get thrown around. And I don't know how educated specifically to these terms our audience, both here and watching, are. So it'd be really good to get a little crystal clear about some of the words we hear about decarbonization and things of that sort. Tilly, maybe take the lead on some of these bigger words that get tossed around, and Anne, weigh in wherever, and potentially with the Finnish words as well, for those, just so that we can set a baseline to understand what we're talking about.
Sure. And also to the audience, if you have questions, at the end there will be a Q&A. So if we've used terms that you want further explanation of, then just ask us then. So the first idea we're going to talk about, just briefly to explain, is energy optimization. So that's really energy efficiency. So we're looking at things there like incorporating LED lighting into sets, or putting charging points in for electric vehicles, to give two examples. It's looking at ways in which we can change our energy efficiency to work in a more sustainable way.
And the Finnish translation is energiatehokkuus. So it's suomeksi mun piti selittää. Joo, eli kerron suomeksi nämä samat asiat, mitä Tilly aloittaa. Eli käytännössä tehdään energiatehokkaampia ratkaisuja kuvauksiin liittyen. On se sitten valaisu LEDin myötä, ja en muista enää mitä Tilly sanoi, mutta pääsette kärryille. Go ahead.
Okay, the next term is decarbonizing, which you're probably very familiar with. It's the idea of stepping away from reliance on fossil fuels and looking at renewable alternatives. So we can use an example of this very directly with Havoc, which I'll be talking more about later. We were very lucky that our studio that we filmed in was powered entirely by a wind turbine. Another aspect of decarbonisation is offsetting a film's carbon footprint, and we'll be talking more about that specifically later.
Ja suoraa suomennostahan meillä ei ole sanalle decarbonization, joten se on jotakin sinne päin, eli astutaan pois tavallaan hiiliteollisuudesta, eli meillä on toimintatapoja, jotka eivät ole riippuvaisia siitä, että se tuottaa hiiliä.
Okay,
sorry, one more. And compensating, eli kompensointi, eli tehdään toimia useimmiten rahalla, joilla niin kuin hyvitetään niitä päästöjä, joita ollaan tupruteltu ilmaan. Eli yhtenä esimerkkinä on juurikin vaikka metsien istutus, koska puut imevät hiiltä ilmasta. Tällä hetkellä ympäristöministeriö on tekemässä selvitystä, että mitä he suosittelevat Suomen valtion tasolla kompensointiväyläksi, joten en ota itse kantaa siihen, mikä olisi Suomessa paras keino. Mutta here's her.
Okay, the next term is electrification. So again, similar to the decarbonisation idea, but looking specifically at ways of generating electricity using renewable sources such as wind, solar, and so on, and how we can incorporate that in film production. So films are able to make proactive choices about where their energy supply comes from, what forms of transport they're using, and also things like hybrid or battery power generation on set or on location.
sähköistäminen, ehkä suora suomennos. Nämä on tosi jotenkin erikoissanoja tälleen suomeksi käännettynä. Mutta jälleen kerran ajatuksena on se, että pystytään alkaa toimia sillä tavalla, että on juurikin vaikka, on se sitten vaikka generaattori, joka toimii uusiutuvan energian muodossa. Eli meillä on sähkögeneraattori, jossa on vaikka aurinkopaneeli.
Okay, the next 2 points I'm kind of going to explain together. So we're looking at the idea of a carbon footprint and also carbon emissions in terms of scope 1, scope 2 and scope 3. So when you make a carbon footprint, you need to collect data from all aspects of production. So basically everything the production buys or purchases during production, you need to feed that into an online carbon calculator, and that then gives you a figure in terms of carbon emissions, CO2 kilograms of emissions, and then that then is translated into a financial figure, which you can then use to offset. So those emissions we measure in, as I say, scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. So scope 1 emissions, you're looking at your essential buildings and the source of production, any cars owned by the company, any costs associated with running that production. And then scope 2, you're looking at the energy you're pulling in to use on that production and the CO2 emissions associated with that energy supply. And then scope 3, which tends to be the highest impact area, is your supply chain emissions. So that's everything from crew vehicles to the suppliers that you're working with, facilities vehicles, anybody else that you're bringing onto production there, caterers and so on. That's all scope 3. So on Havoc in particular, we, in line with Netflix policy, we wanted to have a really thorough carbon footprint. So we have accounted for all of those scope 1, 2 and 3 emissions.
Such a long explanation. I cannot translate it exactly. Eli, what's the first term you explained?
The carbon footprint.
Carbon footprint.
Yeah.
Eli hiilijalanjälki on varmastikin useimmille tuttu, eli juurikin hiilidioksidi on vain yksi keino, millä tavalla voidaan kuvata sitä, että minkälaiset ympäristövaikutukset meidän toiminnalla on tai millä tahansa on, mittareita on useampi. Eli jokaiselle toimelle on periaatteessa laskettavissa hiilipäästö, ja tästä alkaa pikkuhiljaa muodostua sitten se, että minkälainen tämä sun niin sanottu hiilijalanjälki on. Scope 1, 2, 3 ei ole myöskään suoranaisesti, tosi yleisesti Suomessa käytetään juurikin Scope 1, Scope 2 ja Scope 3. Pointtina on, että tavallaan ykkönen on minä ja minun tuotanto ja ne helpommat ja lähimmät päästöt, ja kolmosessa mennään siihen, että on esimerkiksi ostopalvelut, eli on alihankinta ja muuta. Siinä kakkosessa on välissä esimerkiksi juurikin energiantuotanto, eli mitä energiaa myöskin sitten vaikka ostetaan siihen tuotantoon.
Okay, and the final idea is just to talk about the idea of being climate neutral. So obviously at the end of production, you've got your carbon footprint, you've measured all your scope 1, 2 and 3 emissions, you've got your figure in terms of kilograms of CO2, and you've got your financial offset costs. So Netflix, for example, with Havoc, takes the responsibility then to offset that financial cost by investing in high quality offsets. Netflix has a program called Net Zero Plus Nature, so all of their offsets go through that scheme. But then there's also you can take it a little further, so by offsetting you become climate neutral, but you can also go further and become climate negative, and that's where the sum total of your actions is actually putting positives out into the climate.
Eli puhutaan sitten hiilineutraalista ja hiilinegatiivisesta, eli ensisijaisesti mitä tahansa teet, en enää muista tarkalleen mitä Tilly selitti alkuun, minä selitän oman versioni. Eli ensisijaisesti kun se oot tuotannossa tai omassa elämässäsi, niin ensisijainen asia on pienentää niitä päästöjä, joita syntyy maailmaan. Tämän jälkeen se mitä sen jää, niin se olisi hyvä kompensoida, jolloin pääset siihen, että olet niin sanotusti hiilineutraali. Hiilinegatiiviseksi pääset sillä, että jo ylikompensoit, eli juurikin vaikka kaksinkertaisesti kompensoit, on se sitten vaikka lentopäästöt tai mistä puhutaanko.
Super helpful, thank you. So there's one big word that we didn't get into yet, and it requires a little extra conversation, but the term that you hear more and more in this field now is Albert, and an Albert system for for basically environmental analysis and accountability. And I'm not sure many of us know who or what Albert is, so it'd be great to hear from both of you. Number one, what exactly the Albert system is, and two, how it's being used internationally in the UK and Wales and also in Finland.
Okay, so Albert is not a person. It's very confusing. But Albert is the sustainability wing of BAFTA, which is the British Academy of Film and Television Arts. So it's industry funded and it supports productions really to work more sustainably, and they do that in 3 different ways. The first thing you do is you sign up with them to use their online calculator to create your carbon footprint. So as I say, everything you're buying in for that production gets fed into the Albert online calculator, and it's a really useful resource because it gives you, each time you put something in, it shows you on a little pie chart exactly how that is impacting. It also gives you the CO2 figure in terms of emissions and also the financial offset costs, so it allows you to track really accurately how your production is doing. You start off by creating a draft footprint, and that means that in pre-production you can actually make decisions to bring that footprint down, and then as you get all the data finalized, you then have your final footprint at the end with your offset cost, and you can choose then to offset those emissions as Netflix has done. The second part is you have a carbon action plan, and that's a kind of checklist system, again, that you fill in online, and it gives you guidance really to how to work more sustainably, and it covers key areas such as studio and office spaces, filming on location, materials use, disposal. So it gets you thinking about all the ways that you can make decisions that can lower your impact. It also has a really useful section on communications and engagement, and as we'll talk about later, that's really fundamental to bringing about change. You have to really get your whole crew excited about working differently. We'll talk about that more later. The other thing that Albert offers is sustainable production training, and that's offered currently online. It used to be in person pre-COVID, but actually having it online is super handy and enables it to also be used internationally. So.
Yeah, and the situation in Finland with Albert is, I don't know if you mentioned earlier, but originally it's from the UK. So now they are international, working internationally, maybe in 20-something countries. I don't know, I'm not sure about the number. But here, usually what they do, BAFTA makes this deal with broadcasters or production companies, but the situation in Finland is that basically we're not trying to change the system within one company, if it's a production company or broadcaster, but we are here. UPFI has done papers with BAFTA, so that we are trying to move the whole sustainability to our whole industry, so to the broadcasters and production companies, and we have many collaborations. So we have all the broadcasters on board, we have all the film commissions, we have few cities with us, funders, so it's like a big pile of the most important stakeholders who are agreeing that, okay, we should change, the whole industry should change. At the moment, well, we are doing this strategy on sustainability, which will include also social, cultural, and economical aspects, but there's only one me, so we are starting with the environmental point of view. So that is the thing. We are working on the strategy at the moment, and right now there are 5 different production companies that are sort of in the pilot phase of testing out how the system works here, what kind of support they need from UPFI and me, and so that I thought that it's better that we have a smaller group, that we are testing it out, because I know that there will be questions, so it's better to have those questions only with a small group of productions. Instead, we have the same questions coming from the whole of Finland. So we're at that stage that they are testing it out. I'm trying to build this Albert ABC for Finland, so that once the whole system is out, for whole country, probably the end of May, beginning of June, not sure yet, but very soon. Hopefully I will have this handout so that do this so it's easier, it's easier to adapt to a new way of working.
Great, thank you.
I should also add where the name came from. I forgot to explain where Albert came from. So there's a long-running TV show in the UK called EastEnders. It's a soap opera. And they have Albert Square, which is a location on EastEnders. And so the very first Albert spreadsheet was literally an Excel spreadsheet used on EastEnders to monitor their data and to try and take action to work more sustainably. So that was the little kernel of the idea back in, I believe, 2011. And then it's really expanded from there. So now all BBC productions have to be Albert certified, I believe ITV as well, and big streaming platforms now like Netflix also coming on board to use Albert to certify a lot of their productions as well.
But there are I don't know how many tools there are in Europe, that is only one tool.
Yeah.
Probably one of the most common ones and the ones who's been out there for the longest, but still there are like mushrooms in the rain, how you say in Finnish, but they're coming up quite many tools, which is also a bit problematic, but yeah.
We definitely don't say mushrooms in the rain in America.
Oh, you don't?
No.
Okay, yeah.
But I love it.
Yeah. I don't know if it's I just translated
it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, good. You're welcome. Yeah.
All right, so we have a better understanding of the big words associated with sustainable production. We have a better understanding of Albert, which seems to be emerging as the leading analysis system. So let's get down to the nitty-gritty. It leads to the big questions of we want to have sustainable production. What do you guys see as the biggest challenges to sustainable production as we speak? What are the things that are making it hard? And what do you see as solutions that are either already happening or on their way to happening for those biggest challenges?
Mm-hmm. We're going to talk first about energy, and I think you'll notice some differences between the two countries. But for us, as I said, we were so fortunate with Havoc that we were working at Seren Studios in Wales, which is powered entirely by a wind turbine. Now, that turbine it's huge, and as you drive on site, it's the first thing you see. So that was great. Our crew was so intrigued to know what it was. And when they heard that it was powering our whole shoot with no additional power required, it was quite a mind-blowing concept. Not only did we have enough power from the wind turbine to cover all of our requirements, but also about 80% of the remainder of the electricity it was generating is fed directly into the national grid to be used around the UK. So the power of this thing is pretty phenomenal, and it created a really kind of green context, literally as people came onto site. So in many ways, that made my job easier from the start. But also in terms of energy, productions can make really proactive choices about where they get their energy supply from. This is certainly an issue in the UK where traditionally the majority of energy still relies on fossil fuels, but you can request 100% renewable energy tariff. And so we did that with Havoc in a number of areas. So for example, our post-production space in Cardiff was switched across to running on our 100% renewable energy tariff. Also, when we were booking accommodation, our accommodation coordinator made sure that we were prioritizing booking hotels that we had confirmed were running on 100% green energy. So these are just like simple changes, little mindset shifts really when you're planning that you can do that actually have a really big impact, because I think we all understand the urgency to move away from fossil fuels now. It's obviously the highest but the largest factor really when we're looking at the climate emergency facing us. We also made some other little changes that used renewable energy. So, for example, we put in electric vehicle charging points at the studios. That was done as a legacy investment by Havoc to leave for the studios to use in the future when other productions come in. And I loved the idea that these charging points powered vehicles using the power from the wind that was coming from the turbines. So it was really exciting. And we did notice that a lot of crew and production team and cast actually switched to using electric vehicles during the shoot because we just created the right context, I think, and the support was there. Of course, when you go on location, which for us, obviously we're a feature-length drama, so when you go on location, it is like moving a small town here and there. So in terms of energy, that was more of a challenge for us. We worked in a lot of remote areas, and again, that productions need to decide proactively how they can best use energy on location. So perhaps they might want to consider using battery power generation, or if you're using, for example, diesel generators, bear in mind that there are now renewable forms of non-fossil fuel diesel, hydro-treated vegetable oil, for example. So at the moment in the UK, it's a little bit more expensive, but it can lower your carbon emissions by 90%, and also much lower rates of particulate matter, which obviously affect air pollution and breathing problems and so on. So you need to really be thinking through these proactive choices you can make to work in a better way around your energy. I think that's me done.
Nice. Thank you, Tilly.
What was the question? About energy in general.
What are the biggest challenges? Well, to get specific with energy seems to be the biggest. But what are the biggest challenges with Finnish productions in terms of staying carbon neutral and sustainable?
Well, you were talking about the generators. Well, we are a dark country, so like we don't have sunlight like half of the year, and then like we're awake the second half because we have sunlight. So that is especially one thing that really affects the flow, the yearly flow, how we are filming things. Because like in the winter time, it's very dark, it's very cold, so it's not really an option to use like solar panels, generators. So that's one thing. I think we are still a bit like doing these baby steps with the different solutions for the actual shootings. We have some kind of equipment rental. They have something available, but they're not that common still. But then, well, actually, we've talked about quite a lot before this panel with Tilly especially, and we realized that like there's this one important point that Tilly has, with the productions she's done, they have like many very good examples, like what kind of solutions they have. I might not have similar answers, but I have like good answers when we're talking about Finland. So that like they have a problem on a systematic level that, okay, we have this solution for when we're going out filming, but then the country is not providing us this and that. But for us, we might not have the proper equipment that is using renewable energy, but still, like Finland is doing fairly okay with all of this. Because I checked it, and at the moment, Finland, like 37% of the energy provided is from renewable resources, and by the end of the decade, it will be 51%. So that's I think that's a big thing. I know we also have, at least in the capital area, we have at least one studio that has solar panels on their rooftop. So like I think they're partially buying the energy, but they're also providing like solar power energy. So it's also about a lot to do with who are what are the places you collaborate with, so that you're choosing where you're going to shoot. Like if you have this and that options, then you should go for the one who is already taking care of what kind of energy they are using. Also, like one big thing here happening at the moment is the climate law is they're not upgrading the law. What's the word for it? They're renewing it, like they're having a second look at it, because I think the previous one or the current one that is at the moment, it's a law that goes until 2050, but it's like something like one sentence, and we will be climate neutral by 2050. But there are not like steps in between. But so now they're renewing it. And like the target is that Finland will be climate neutral by 2035, and they have like steps on it. So also that's a big thing. The reason I'm mentioning it is that because we will have these kind of things in our law. So if I have a company, I feel more at ease to put some more effort on this, because I know that it's in the law, and no matter what our government is, like it will pay you back later on. Like, I should do a bit more effort on this, for example, to provide something like solar panel generators, because I know that, okay, this is something that the whole country is aiming for. I might have answered your question.
I think you did.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I have another one for you, which is, so we know energy is a big problem source and place to tackle. We also know that logistics and transportation are too.
Yeah.
What's the situation in Finland? You know, we've, as a relative tourist here, we're always hearing about the railways being zero emission.
Yeah.
Obviously, you still have cars and vans and trucks and all the things that come with productions. What kind of an impact and footprint does that have on your productions here?
Well, the funny thing is that we don't have any numbers from Finland yet. We don't, like, that's the whole thing why I am working on the strategy, that we don't know the level of sustainability of our industry here in Finland. Like, we can assume that Finland is doing good, no matter what the topic is. Like when you're seeing, when you're talking about whatever on a global aspect. So Finland is doing okay in many things. So I'm assuming that also our industry is doing fairly okay. But I don't have any numbers on it. I cannot tell you that, okay, approximately 1 hour of TV is this or that much of emissions. I don't have that kind of information. So the only thing we can rely on are the international statistics. And as far as Albert provides information, logistics is around a third or even a half of whatever you do, whatever production you do, no matter what the genre is, or is it film or TV. So that's like, because the thing is, if you want to make the biggest impact, then you have to really concentrate on the biggest problem. So here, if logistics is like half of the emissions or even a third, if you have a personal energy only to do one thing, then concentrate on logistics or energy. But most common, the logistics, that's the way to go. But yeah, that's the thing we are relying here. And yeah, our railway system is zero emissions, which is
amazing.
I think like with quite many topics here in Finland, because that's the norm for us. It's hard to see like the things that are really good here. So that is also like, I still know people who are amazed that, really? Our railway system is zero emissions? I did not know that. So like that's the level, like how we are seeing things, because it's just the way it is. So I know it's not realistic to have all the equipment and go to the train and have all that luggage over the in the rain. Well, that happens as well in the train. So it's not realistic. We of course we need the vans, etc. But still, there is definitely room for questions and discussion, because. Like I've done some traveling within Finland, so if I had a producer who came to me that, okay, you have to go to the northern Finland, what are your thoughts on going by railway, by train? Like, do you want to fly there or use the train and go there by night? Well, for me, that's an easy answer. But still, if you're not doing the questions, if it's not like... If that's not the way you are learning yourself to work, to work in a new way, to ask new kind of questions, then the change is probably not happening, because you're moving the decision making on the people you are hiring, for example. So like it should be you always asking the questions that, okay, we have these kind of options, like you won't be staying in a hotel the next night, but like your night at the hotel will be going by train and sleeping there.
Yeah.
Are you fine with it?
So thinking through the ramifications of each decision is part of the filter.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Tilly, for you guys in Wales, for everybody, transportation, logistics, big challenge.
Absolutely, yeah.
How are you tackling it?
Well, it is around 50% of production's carbon footprint, as you say. Various things. I think it's interesting to think about creatively. So if I give you an example here, location, filming on location. You'll remember from on Havoc, when we move around, we're a lot of things to move about, all the facilities, caterers, and so on. The thing you have to consider is it worth going on location, or can we do this differently? And that's where you get interesting creative choices. So instead of all that transport implication of moving around, can you create the same thing in studio using visual effects? And some of these new techniques have been employed on Havoc. So our writer-director, Gareth Evans, is quite clued in with these new technologies coming through. And so a lot of the times where we could have shot on location, we actually got around that by using pre-visualization and then visual effects afterwards to create the same effect. Obviously, then you've got those discussions because a lot of people feel passionately that they want to go on location, and that's how you get the authenticity. So again, it's always a balance. But from my point of view as a sustainability advisor, I would always say, don't travel unless you absolutely have to. Another example of this would be if you're going overseas on location, can you employ local crew, like Jewel did here when they came to Finland to work? So I think you can reduce your transport part of the footprint by maybe thinking a bit creatively around solutions. But also in Wales, we are really looking at the infrastructure as a nation. The Welsh government is very proactive in terms of tackling climate change. And so some of the work that I'm doing using Havoc and taking those learnings forward with our Maximising Havoc project, that will be drilling down and making key recommendations for how we can improve infrastructure around things like transport. And on a broader scale in Wales, we are running a pilot scheme called the Wales Green New Deal Transformation Plan, and that will be taking data from all TV and film productions in Wales over the next 18 months. It's run by BFI and BAFTA, and that will become part of the learnings for them about how we, across the UK, ultimately can make these difficult decisions around target areas like transport and logistics. The other thing I would say is keep those conversations going. So if you think of a kind of ripple-out effect of communication, a lot of your suppliers and the transport related to supply chain emissions, you can have interesting conversations which actually tackle that as well. So one example of that would be one of our courier companies. We ask them to always use the smallest vehicle possible for the job. So sometimes we'd only use a motorbike to courier something rather than just chucking it in a van. So always try and interrogate your choices when you're thinking about vehicle types. Can you limit the number of moves? And also a lot of those companies in your supply chain, they will then become more proactive. So this courier company I'm thinking of, they actually then signed up to the International Tree Foundation, and they plant a tree every day that they're trading. So that was just from a conversation that we had with them that then inspired them to work more sustainably. So never underestimate the power of a good conversation.
Amazing. And I want to stay on Havoc for a minute because that was a shared experience and a wonderful one that we had. And for me, it was pretty amazing, even from day one, walking around, seeing signs at catering, for example, about the environmental impact of going vegetarian versus eating meat, and just allowing people to think without being overly didactic. They can still choose what they wanted to choose, but seeing that kind of access to information and thought, and it goes back to, Ane, what you were talking about of thinking about the ramifications each time you make a decision was amazing. So having been through that for several months and seeing you do the work on the ground, everything from spearheading the biggest initiatives to literally, walking around and sometimes even collecting trash if that's what it called for, which is incredible.
That's what it often calls for.
Yeah.
We'll talk more about that later, I believe. But in terms of veggie vegan diet, we decided at the beginning, I'll just tell you very briefly, we didn't want to ban anything because it immediately makes people feel a bit cross. So instead, we presented people with the carbon data around their meal choices, and clearly plant-based diets are much, much lower impact. So we just had loads of fun posters around, giving people that data and saying that just by one simple switch, you can have a great effect on the planet. So people got really excited by that. And I think you were saying, Aram, that you were fully vegan for a little while.
At least.
A vegetarian.
For production, yeah.
And Gareth, bless him, our director, fantastic director, he managed 50 whole days of eating a veggie or vegan diet before the night shoots got to him, and he did cave and go back back to meat. But we were told by our caterers that they'd never seen a production with so many people choosing plant-based. And I think just if you want to introduce that, I would suggest go in, make it a fun, positive, proactive choice. And try not. I don't think banning things works. It just puts people's backs up. Try and put the choice in their hands.
But I think information is key, and when you feel like when each individual feels like they can actually make a small difference, it's incredible to see the way people opt in.
Yeah, it's empowering for them, and I think you get this the sense of optimism that ripples out. That on an individual level, as part of a crew that's working sustainably, you can, on a daily basis, have a positive impact on the planet.
What would you say was your favorite success on Havoc?
Oh my goodness, how long have you got?
About 5 minutes.
Okay, so I think my top one would be our levels of crew engagement and excitement about working differently. So I should just say, when I started on Havoc, the scale of the task was like looking up at Everest, because a feature film has roughly 3,000 ton of carbon emissions impact, and trying to persuade anything to shift is like trying to turn a super tanker. So I think, to get that excitement and engagement from your crew, all credit to the producers, because they were very behind what we were trying to do, and Netflix as well, having that authority from Netflix and them wanting to impact on climate change in a positive way. That gave me the energy really to win everybody else over. And I think one thing that really surprised me and inspired me was that there is a real will for change. People want to work differently, and they want to find solutions. And never underestimate that they're where the ideas are as well for working better. So keep having those conversations.
Great, thank you. So I want to move on to the benefits of sustainable production, sustainability in production. I think everybody would assume there's environmental benefits, but it'd be nice to drill down a little bit on that. And I imagine there's other benefits that people aren't necessarily thinking about. Whoever wants to go first, I open it up to both of you, but just to talk about what are the various benefits of sustainable production.
Gosh, so many. I mean, you've got the economic benefits and that ripple out effect along the supply chain. You've also got so many in terms of health and well-being. You've got all of those benefits as well. I mean, Anna, do you want to go first on this, or how do you want to talk about it? Because we both have so many areas that we could hit here.
Yeah.
Let's talk with economical.
Yeah. I'd say as long as we're in this transition mode, if that is a word, yes. So when you are trying to switch the way you are doing this industry, the way you are working, if you are the forerunners, the ones number 1 or 2 or 3, then you have definitely you will have economic this impact there. You will benefit from it. If you are the first ones to offer a new solution, a new, more sustainable solution. Obviously, the goal is that eventually we have a new norm, so that we won't have anything there. Then we have to figure out what is the next new thing that comes up. But at the moment, we desperately need new kind of information. At least here in Finland, we need to find out all the bits and pieces how we can start understanding our industry from a sustainable perspective. So if you are the first ones to offer that, okay, we know how much energy is used in our studio with this kind of set or that kind of set, that is definitely an asset. And also this is only concerning one production, but if you're thinking about this from a global, international perspective, as a country, I'd say when talking about Finland and whatever other country, things are fairly good here, although things are not perfect, obviously, but still the big problem we have in our industry that we kind of always lack resources. We're doing things in a fairly small way, and that is also sustainable, but obviously it has its own effects. For example, the social sustainability. When you don't have enough money on something, this is an industry of passion, and like it takes a lot of you out of you if you are always like trying to push more and more because you don't have the money to hire more people, for example. But still, we are doing fairly well here. So for us, for example, Tampere area or Finland in general, the way we are working here, we can assume it's quite sustainable. So that is something, definitely a factor that probably interests. I don't know, like how Dual came here to be shot, but if we are like putting the topic of sustainability out there, Finland will look good in that conversation. That like the way we have learned to do things already, and now we are aiming to be even better, to be even more sustainable. Because I'm not saying that like the work is not done, even though there are many topics that things are good. The work is never done, so I'm pushing them to be even better. But still, the thing, how we are doing things here at the moment is sustainable, but we don't have the language to tell that. Like we don't have those kind of information to hand out, like to international productions, like why should you be here? And especially, I am not promoting that please 50 people come and fly here, but it's more that as far as I understood in Dual, like there were only few of you coming here, but most of the crew was local. So like that is the smart way of doing international productions as well.
On Dual, we had about 5 people from the States, and everybody else was local from Finland.
But if, like, did I understood it correctly that you were also like doing it a bit more smaller way that you're used to doing productions? Do you feel like there was something you were lacking, something or compromising?
It was actually quite freeing, to be honest. It was, I think, if Riley was here, he would say that having a smaller...
And Riley is?
The director, the writer-director, who is here, but not here. He would have said that having the smaller footprint with the crew was actually quite freeing, and a lot of that was because of COVID. We had people in zones, and we only sort of had the people we really had to have there at all times. And it allowed for a lot less congestion on set. It allowed for a lot more freedom of movement and for people to really feel empowered and really own their role as opposed to feeling like they were one of many. So there were a lot of benefits, I think, both psychologically and really you know, happening in that instance. So.
And I'm sure if you like even thought about like we're doing this because it's sustainable, but it ended up it ended up being sustainable. And like whatever the topic is we're talking here, it's more about quality, not quantity. Like whatever, if you're like buying TV shows for as a broadcaster or you're doing whatever, we are moving into a world, or I wish we would be living in a world where quality comes over quantity. You know.
Quality over quantity.
You can finish
every
my
day
sentence.
of the week.
Can I jump in here as well and mention
them?
It's a little bit more specific to production, but the notion of circular economy and resource efficiency. So obviously, especially on a large-scale production, the amount of materials that you're using and buying in, usually from local suppliers, is immense. And so there is a tradition in film at the end, because of pressures of time and budget, to just chuck everything, and it's the most impossible thing to witness because there's a lot of waste, as I'm sure you're all aware of. So one thing we're working on now is a mindset shift around what you do with those materials. So we're encouraging an attitude of reuse, recycle, and you know, don't waste it in the first place. Be really careful about maximizing your materials in terms of efficiency. As you're all aware, costs of living are going through the roof. Costs of materials are going through the roof. Our planet is a limited resource. We need to be really careful how we're using those resources. So again, I think increasingly going into the future, film productions are doing a lot of work around the mindset, around how you manage these resources. And I think studios, sustainable studios of the future, could do a lot to promote this as well, in terms of perhaps storing items that can be used for construction, having costume resources, prop resources, and so on, so that you can reduce that amount of waste. That was just the economic benefit there, really, of being careful with your resources.
Great. And then let's talk, it seems obvious, but let's talk about the environmental benefits. And on one hand, we could say it's just one production or it's just one industry of a billion different industries and businesses, but there's a real impact, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think crew are so aware of that impact now. I had some amazing conversations early on with some of our construction team about the environmental impact and the scale of the waste, and none of them like that scale of waste. I think maybe shame is too strong a word, but they're certainly acutely aware that we don't want to be throwing things away if they can be better used. So we did a lot around set disposal, sharing of resources. We donated a lot of our set items from enormous, beautiful trees that we'd had made to set drapes, all sorts, and donated to local drama colleges, schools, charities. We also, I think once you establish that mindset shift around sharing resources, it does have like this knock-on environmental benefit for the communities around you.
And assume it's the case here, we, certainly the rest of us look at Finland as very forward, progressive, obviously more in tune with nature and environment. Do you feel, this is a slight shift from the question because we all know there's an environmental benefit. Do you feel that Finns are, and the Finnish film industry specifically, are completely dialed in, or is there still, overconsumption or places that could be tightened up?
Yeah, well, hard question. My personal opinion is that overconsumption is a problem no matter what is the thing you're talking about. It's always important to think about, is this something that we need or desire? Is it like in your personal life, do I need this, or is it an actual need, or do I just desire something? So like we could kind of switch that into productions as well. Like we actually have to stop and think about what are the actual needs, and like that, then there comes the important questions of pre-planning. Like we definitely, it's a common thing that we lack of time in the pre-production. We definitely have to like work on our way to have more time to plan things. I think the speed how productions are done here, if it's film or TV, the pre-production period is quite short. And that's the most important part when you are making the decisions on sustainability. So that is like one thing. I totally forgot your question. I just started talking.
It was an offshoot of the environmental benefits of sustainable production, but also whether you feel Finland as a country that's generally viewed as ahead of that curve. Yeah. Is totally ahead of that curve, or if there's still places that are lacking?
I think we're in kind of also in the illusion, for example, when we're talking about waste, that we are good with waste. Because, yeah, it's a fact that Finland doesn't have any landfills. So, for example, in Albert, there's a question like, we have zero landfill policy. I can reply, well, yeah, we're Finland, so we have that policy here. So that's not an issue for us. But still, I think it's a number from maybe a few years back, but for example, I think the waste we produce in Finland, like 1/3 is bio-waste, like easy solution. Just don't put it there, because the mixed waste that we have, we burn it, which is horrible, but we use the heat to heat up cities, etc. And when you have bio-waste there, obviously it takes more energy more time for the waste to like burn up. So we definitely need to do better, like wasting our waste. No, how do you say it?
Recycling.
Recycling our waste. Yeah. And also one thing about nature that I want to mention is that we are a country of like 1,000 lakes and how many forests. But still, when viewing the situation like from an international point of view, the productions coming here, like one of the big thing I also want to concentrate on is to kind of control the way we want international productions to work here. So that like, although I am saying like things are fairly okay here, we have a sustainable thing going on here, to a certain matter. we still have to find a way to talk about it for the international productions. So that, like, if you're going to Lapland, I think they have, in the northern Finland, they have like this code of conduct, like how they want the productions to film here. But so that when the industry is becoming more and more international, then we still have to take control of it. Like, okay, if you're coming here, we want you to be sustainable. And I'd love to see the system going in that way, that we are also providing information that, okay, that is a studio that we are promoting because they have this sustainability thing going on there, so that we're also like, when your money comes here, we are also like kind of like guiding it, so that like those stakeholders they also benefit from that. Now I'm just babbling. You know the idea.
No,
yeah.
Look, this might be a little bit of an aside, but I'm personally a big believer that you vote with your dollars. That in democracy you have a vote, but also every day you make decisions in how you spend your money, and that can be as small as buying something that's renewable or not, but also as big as where you shoot your film, because that studio has a certain policy on sustainability versus another, or a government that says you have to work a certain way or not. And obviously you have to, in free markets, figure out a way to stay competitive financially while also prioritizing sustainability. So that's a great answer. Yeah. And that actually leads to, I want to segue and Tilly ask you, is essentially, how do we tackle this long term? Is this a every person bottom up? Is this a top down mandated from governments or big operators? How do you see this all coming together as a sustainability solution?
I like to think of something I call a pyramid of engagement. So I think we need buy-in right at top level. So I'm talking governments, broadcasters, streaming platforms, producers. You need complete commitment at those levels, and also financial commitment, frankly, because at the moment there's not adequate teams or budgets working in sustainability and film production. So if you want to scale up the change that's possible, you have to have a line in your budget to do that work. But then, as I mentioned earlier, you also need the crew engagement, and you need to get people excited about working differently and working better, and that help them understand the reasons that they're doing that, and that their personal impact on the planet is significant. Also, before I forget, at some point before we finish today, if I can jump back to talking about waste, just before it goes out of my head.
Absolutely.
But yeah, in terms of what we do going forward, I think it is just bear in mind that pyramid of engagement, have those conversations and get people excited, but also bear in mind we need to be seeing real financial commitment coming down the line, so that people doing my job actually can scale up the work, because it needs to happen really quickly. I think we've all got this sense of urgency. I know it's what gets me out of bed in the morning. We need change happening now. We have like a decade window here to impact on trying to stay under 1.5 temperature rise. So I think we're all aware of the urgency here.
We'll circle back to waste, but just to follow up on that note. So how do I or random crew member feel a sense of ownership and a lack of apathy? What are the small things that he or she or we could do in the absence of a government mandate, or in the absence of a studio mandate, to actually bring a better, more sustainable self to the set?
I think it's a feeling that their ideas are valid, partly. I'm big on conversations. I think our crew is our best resource here for finding the solutions of the future. So keep having those conversations, keep making them feel that their work is valued. I had people coming up to me on Havoc on a daily basis saying, thank goodness you're here, we wanted to suggest this, or how can we find a solution to this, can you help us? They don't want to be working in a damaging way, they want to work in a really constructive way. And that's where our solutions will lie, I think. We need money coming from the top, and we need solutions found at grassroots level to keep pushing things forward. So it's something I get quite passionate about, because I think so often with going into film production, all the focus is on delivering the creative outcome. But actually, people also want to be working in a good way. I think it has clear mental health benefits if you feel like you can go to work and every day your actions are important on a global level. So you need to, simple switches we've talked about, like choosing plant-based food. You need to make people remember that by making that switch, give themselves a pat on the back, make them feel good, get them excited about what they can do on a personal level.
Amazing. And we are going to circle back to waste because I saw it firsthand on Havoc. But in your opinion, again, looking at Finland as a more progressive, ahead of the curve kind of country, does the big shift for the next 10 years that we're talking about here with the limited timeline, is it top down, is it bottom up, is it both? How do we affect these changes quickly in the scope of the film industry and TV industry?
I think it's both. Well, I'm working on both levels, like bottom up and up, but so yeah, I think it's a combination of working all aspects. Like the shift I've seen in Finland within a few years, it is something I could not ever dream of. Like I've always said it's like my honeymoon period. Like that has lasted for 3 years now. So I'm still in awe that so many people are interested in this topic. I can definitely relate to what Tilly you said about having the meaningfulness, certain, like in the way you're working. Because I've done like so many productions that have been just work for me. But it could have been like the tiny question, like, Anne, how do you prefer doing this or that? But like, I've done some things the way I feel comfortable with. But to have that production to ask the questions and provide me time to make solution that is more sustainable one, that will get me going like so much better and connect to the production I'm working on. So like that is definitely the key there, to have the discussions, and although you might know the answer, still make the questions. For example, if like I have this very good example here. May I take my time?
You may.
Thank you. Last summer, I'm going to do it this summer as well. I went to see baseball games, the Finnish baseball games. And I don't eat meat. And it's a common Finnish thing that you have sausages there. And it's like €2 and you eat the sausage and you're happy. And you're watching baseball. Every single time, I went to maybe 10 different games. I saw that there's no vegetable sausage there. Like I could see it with my eyes. But still I went there and I asked, do you have vegetable sausage here? And they're like, no, like time after time. But then the discussion started going like, okay, so what could be the options? And then I told them like, there are these frozen ones, like they last a long time. Hopefully next summer I will have my vegetable sausage there. Like it's also about asking the questions, although you know the answers. Mm-hmm. That might give the building your office is in. Like you might be the 5th one to ask question about renewable energy, and that might be the question that the time that the people taking care of the building, they understand that, oh, okay, this is a topic that we have to work on it. So it's about being open and asking the questions.
Great answer.
You're welcome.
Do they have the vegetable sausages now?
Well, it's like winter time. They're not playing baseball here now. It's a summer thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I hope they come around on it.
I will send you a message if I have it.
I expect weekly updates.
Yeah.
Tilly, let's talk about waste.
Let's talk about waste. Yeah. Okay, my passion project. So I think we need to stop thinking of waste as rubbish, and we need to start seeing it as a resource. And incineration that you described is one way of processing it, but also that misses a trick, because lots of things can be turned into new things. And it's quite easy. Once you start talking to suppliers and finding those solutions, you can actually wave a magic wand and create new products. So I'm going to give you some examples of the work we did on Havoc around waste. I should also say before we start, the scale of waste that a film of that scale produces is enormous. So proportionately, every day, we would go through all of our waste and we would separate it by resources so that we could create waste streams and dispose of them appropriately. So the first thing was all of our food waste. We also used compostable plates and cutlery, so all of that food waste could be collected up around the studio and locations and all of the workshop spaces, and we took it up to an anaerobic digester. And what that does is it mixes all the food waste with cattle slurry, and it generates biogas, 55% of which is methane. And that biogas is then fed through electricity generators, and it goes straight into the national grid. So we are literally turning our food waste into power. And the alternative to that would either be burning it or going into landfill, which would then potentially release all of that methane into the atmosphere. So we feel that by turning it into electricity, it was like a double win. We rescued the methane from the atmosphere, and we created electricity. We actually generated in the region, well, we processed in the region of 8 tons of food waste during Havoc. And the equivalent was about the same as taking 5 cars off the road for a whole year when we did the data around that. So it does have a significant carbon impact. So the other thing we did about our food waste was our caterers had all the legal approvals in place to be able to donate our spare food meals that were left over to a local rough sleepers shelter, homeless shelter. So we made sure that none of our food went to waste. It was either donated or it was turned into electricity. That did take a huge level of commitment, as Aram saw. I mean, I'm very hands-on when it comes to work, and I was hands-on with those waste bags, let me tell you. So
you certainly were. Gloves on. Sometimes.
Very committed. Yeah. So another great story we had, and again, it was a learning process for me because I didn't know those solutions were out there until I had the conversations. But all of our stretchy plastic, all of our polythene, so packaging, wrapping, bags, all of that, we collected all of that up over 300 kilograms of stretchy plastic, which would practically fill this room. I mean, plastic is very light. And then that was taken away to a processing plant in the Welsh valleys, where it was turned into damp-proof membrane for the building trade. So it was turned into a permanent product that is then locked into a new building, and it's called a closed-loop process because it totally removes that plastic from the environment and locks it into a permanent structure. So that was really exciting. Our costume department was particularly thrilled by that because you can imagine the amount of stretchy plastic that they've got. But also props, construction, all the different departments saved all of their stretchy plastic. So we turned that into an exciting new product. Polystyrene as well. It's used a lot for set build and prop modelling.
I think it's styrofoam in the US.
Oh, you would call it styrofoam. Yeah. So a nightmare if it gets into the environment. It breaks down into its microparticles. It just takes forever to go away. So our construction team was saying, look, we've got loads of polystyrene, styrofoam. How can we get rid of it? We don't want to just throw it in a skip. And I found a local company who could take it and process it. So they compact it right down and they heat it and they grind it into little microplastic pellets, which are then turned into new items of furniture and things. So again, it's about asking the questions and finding the solutions. So we recycled 2 whole Luton vans worth of polystyrene, styrofoam, and saved that from landfill or incineration, neither of which is a good idea. COVID, PPE, face masks, aprons, face shields, all of those, we found a company that could recycle those products. And again, they turn them into plastic pellets and make them into new materials. So there's never an excuse for putting a face mask into a rubbish bin. And the final cool story was rigging ropes. So our stunt riggers and our set riggers, they use thin but very, very strong high tensile ropes called Technora or Tech 12. And these ropes are impossible to destroy. If you throw them into landfill or try and burn them or throw them in the sea, they just won't go away. They're very hard to break. So we worked with a company called Extreme Rigging, who are also work in Wales, based in Wales. And they took all of our clean Tech 12 ropes and they send them back free of charge to the original manufacturers, where the ropes are broken down into their original fibres. And then they're made into new products such as body armour. So again, that was another thing we saved. Okay. So I'm really proud of the work we did on Havoc. Part of it was me, just being persistent and finding solutions. And part of it was our crew, because again, it's those conversations. People have ideas, they have challenges, and between you, it's collaborative. You find those solutions. The potential is huge.
And part of it, I also want to give a shout out. They're not here today, but we're the Netflix team and also Severn Screen, who was the lead production company on the film out in Wales, who did a great job taking charge and also empowering Tilly and her team to really be able to do all these incredible things. It was truly amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I had total support. I feel so privileged. I had total support from top down and across grassroots. It's that pyramid of engagement. Thanks to you, Aram, as well, and to Netflix. You know, I just feel in this instance, it was like a perfect fusion that just came together and we were able to get things rolling. I still would like to say that with a team and a budget, you could scale that work up. So in the future, let's hope that these things start coming through.
Absolutely. So,
can I have one comment here?
You may.
Quick one. Thank you. Like, great to hear about those solutions. I did not know those. I also want to kind of like scale it down a bit so that like people within the industry also understand that how big of a thing it is, so that like our industry cannot change the world, to say. So like there is so many different options for new kind of business models like out there, that we have like one production is basically like this big circus like moving around and it's too much work for us to find the solutions. Like, could someone please do this kind of business model? So we're Googling that all the time. But like there's room for new kind of businesses so that we are like ready with our money and ready with our materials. We just need the surroundings also to change with us. So it's not only on our shoulders.
That's a great point. Absolutely.
I think that's where studios come in. I'd like to see a sustainability liaison officer working in every studio to pass those contacts on and to highlight the green suppliers that they could work with to find these solutions. Because you're so right. A film production is like a crazy entity that just comes and builds itself up into this huge scale city, and then it's gone, like it was never there. Like, you know, so we need a continuity between productions to really build the work that we're trying to do. Yeah. Build those networks.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're low on time. I have a few more questions, but if anyone else in the audience has any questions, I think now would be a good time to give you guys the opportunity. So just raise your hands if there's anything you'd like to ask from either of our esteemed experts here.
Any questions?
Nina.
So thank you very much for a super interesting panel. My name is Nina Rudanko. I come from a company called IPR VC. So I have a question, because we sometimes say that you get what you measure. So how do you measure if your production has been sustainable? Do you have like KPIs or some other indicators?
I think for us that came back to a mixture of Netflix corporate goals in terms of working sustainably, but also Albert. So we use the Albert system, and that carbon action plan is very clear. So when you submit that to Albert, they then audit your footprint and audit your action plan. They come back with a host of questions, and then they give you a sort of 3-star rating. So at that point, we'll know how well we did. But you can also gauge it. I mean, I think once you understand and your team understand like the principles of working sustainably, you can start to get a feel for whether it's working or not. But it will always come down to data, and that's why having an accurate carbon footprint that covers all, you know, scope 1, 2, and 3 supply chain emissions, that's so important, because without that, you can't really have a clear picture.
And I'd also like to add that the idea of sustainability within our industry it's flexible, it's changing all the time, because we are not doing the same movie twice. So, like, the only way we can think about was this sustainable or not, we should calculate the second option, the not sustainable option, like to calculate the what ifs. So we could have normally do this like this way, the emissions would be like this, but we chose to do it like this way. So yeah, it kind of was sustainable. In the TV industry, it's a bit different, because the speed of making is faster, and then you have TV series or formats where you have a studio production that is almost like copy pasting with certain elements. Then you can like you can have the calculation that was this sustainable or not. But because we are not doing the same movie twice, it's always so much linked to the content we're making. And that's like the main focus why we are doing what we are doing. We're not doing something for it to be sustainable. We are doing a product that should be sustainable. So like the priority is the content, and then we have the sustainability like there. But yeah, the content is the number one. There are different things and tools how to like think about what you're putting on screen, but still it's a longer conversation, like how much you should think about the script from a sustainable angle, but let's not go there. But yeah, the sustainability, it's a flexible thing.
That is a good point you make there about script, because as a room of creatives here, there is a lot of power in what you can do editorially in terms of content to get discussion going about climate change. There was an action that was agreed at COP26, which is called the Global Climate Content Pledge, which a lot of companies have signed up to work to, and that is all about getting green messaging across and also get those conversations happening through the work that you're doing.
Thank you. Any other crowd questions, audience?
I have a question.
Sure.
Marta Bogdańska, I'm a filmmaker and visual artist, and I have a question because maybe I didn't understand exactly the benefits, the economical benefits. That, for example, I want to convince someone, like a studio or producer, to work sustainably. And the second question is, are you also involved, let's say in this specific example that you're giving here in this one film, a production, sorry, were you also involved in the way that things were built, for example, not to use styrofoam or to use other materials? So are you also involved in that process, or you only come afterwards and you try to kind of deal with the mess that's already done?
Yeah, it is a great question, and I have to confess it's probably the latter, but I would love it to be the former. Like, I think the sooner you have a sustainability advisor involved, the sooner you're able to start thinking about things differently. But there are a lot of old habits still embedded. There's a lot of creative processes that are quite slow to change. And again, as I said before, it comes down to having those conversations and to try and get a gradual attitude shifts. It's like nudging people in the direction. You can't put people's backs up by forcing change too fast, and it has to be collaborative, and it has to be like you have to have that full engagement, because otherwise you just won't get anywhere. So I see it as I'd love it to happen tomorrow, but I appreciate it's a longer-term strategy than that. We're doing some work in Wales around looking at set designs, like whether there's ways of designing sets more sustainably and enabling them to be taken apart in a way such that they can be used again. So there is work going on around that research and development side, but it will just be a slow old process, I think. Ideas welcome. As far as the economic aspects, I get asked by producers, okay, tell me the cost benefits of working sustainably. And that's really hard to answer because, frankly, at the moment, often those sustainable choices are more expensive. So hiring a battery or hybrid generator is going to cost you more than running a diesel generator. So to some extent, you almost need to look at it beyond just cost. But then, as I explained just then, with waste and resource management and circular economy, there are systems you can put in place that I think will have resource efficiency and economic benefits for production. You may not see those benefits straight away, but I think long term, definitely that will come in. So reuse of materials being one example. To talk about food waste again, my favourite topic, that we made massive cost savings by processing it through anaerobic digestion, because it's so much cheaper than throwing it in a skip. So much cheaper. And, for me, that was a no-brainer. I'd love to see all productions doing that. But it does take commitment on the ground.
And I would just add that that's part of the top-down as well, where there has to be, both from a governmental point of view and also from funders, whether those are governmental funders or studios and streamers, there needs to be, and there's beginning to emerge, some favoritism for sustainable production plans, which may not be more economically, cheaper, so to speak, but might actually give the film a better chance to get made. So ultimately, producers and crew get paid when the movie gets made. So that's another way to look at it.
and I have two quick answers on this. I'm being in a dialogue with the funders, and they are also asking the questions that, okay, should this be a criteria for funding? Which is obviously yes. In Finland, I'd say it's a bit too early because we need, because for example, Albert, it's in a pilot phase. So we need to be a bit further and for the system to be available for everybody. And from then we can start the discussion that should we start asking these as a funding criteria. And also the tiny activist in me wants to answer that once you have the information out there and people as individuals and as companies understand the numbers and how what the hurry is in all of this, then when you understand what is the cost of not doing things in a certain way, then you really start to be interested in this, because it's more expensive to not to do, to solve the problem afterwards than trying to prevent it. We are not that special. Our industry is not that special that we could have a free ride on this. All the industries should do it, should do this. All the countries should do it. Finland, great country, but we are not that special that we are we'll wait that you will come to our level and then we start moving. No, our industry should work as well.
Absolutely. So we're out of time on that note, but I think the clear takeaway from today is that the way to achieve sustainability is to clone these two wonderful ladies many times over and spread them all over the world. No, but on a serious note, I would just say that for the next generation, I don't know who in this room does what, and friends and network, and also people watching. But this topic that we've covered today is absolutely an emerging and exploding field, not just in the film industry, but all over the world, and it's a very important one. So what I would say is for anybody who's interested, do a little digging, do a little exploring, find out how you can potentially, or your friends or colleagues can potentially move into this field, because it's, first of all, from a financial, selfish point of view, a lucrative one, because it's starting to become a job that's in demand. And then also just from a spiritual and greater purpose, one would be a very satisfying one for people to be involved with. So I'd say for everybody here and also watching, if you have any interest whatsoever, dig a little bit deeper and see if there are opportunities for you to get active.
Can I also add one more thing on a final note? I promise, and then I'll be quiet. Please keep the mindset of stubborn optimism. It's not my phrase. It was coined by Christina Figueres, who's involved with the International Panel for Climate Change. Stubborn optimism is the key. It's really hard work, this, and at times it feels impossible. You have to be stubborn and tenacious, and you also have to stay optimistic. If you start losing your optimism, that's when depression kicks in, and then you become powerless. So stubborn optimism is the last thing I'd like to share with you.
Thank you so much. Tilly, Anne, thank you so much. And to everybody, thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody, for participating today. Thank you so much. Thank you, Aram. Thank you, Tilly. Thank you, Anne. Thank you, European Union, for funding this. And thank you, Tampere Film Festival. You are amazing and you're phenomenal. Thank you. Have a great festival.
Thank you.